US President Donald Trump has said that the United States will take over the Gaza Strip and permanently relocate nearly 2 million Palestinians to neighbouring countries. This proposal follows his previous calls for Egypt and for Jordan to resettle Gazans, something both countries have firmly rejected. International experts are condemning this idea as a violation of international law. But does Trump's plan truly breach international law? Let's talk about it with senior researcher from the Mapungubwe Institute, Jeenah. Naeem, good morning and thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Is Trump's proposed ownership of the Gaza Strip, let's start there, ethnic cleansing?
Yes, I mean, the proposal he's making is ethnic cleansing. He wants to forcibly remove 2 million people off the land on which they are living, even if it is among rubble, and relocate them to other territories of his choosing. That is certainly ethnic cleansing and certainly is against international law.
Well, Trump, in all of these exchanges around Gaza and the fate of the Palestinians ultimately, seems to be changing the international rules of engagement. And while many think that his utterances regarding this proposed ethnic cleansing are limited to his words, can he legally take over another people's territory without opposition?
No, he can't. I mean, Gaza is occupied territory, currently occupied by Israel under international law, as the International Court of Justice has ruled and as the United Nations has said. It's occupied territory. It belongs to Palestinians, even if it is occupied by Israel. Israel doesn't even have the right under international law to locate its own citizens as settlers in that territory, let alone give it away to any other country. And the United States certainly does not have the right to just move in and take it over. I mean, this is it's a kind of ridiculousness that Trump has illustrated not only now but even from his first presidency, where the United States, in the person of Donald Trump, is able to do whatever it wants on the international stage. And frankly, you know, to talk about a violation of international law, I don't think it makes any sense to him, because he doesn't really care about international law or any other law except that which he makes. So he thinks that if he, for example, writes up and signs an executive order that the United States should take over Gaza, then that is sufficient, because that's how business is done. Except that international law is doesn't work as a business deal. So all parts of his proposal, the relocation of Palestine, the forcible removal and relocation of Palestinians, taking over the territory, building whatever he wants to build, holiday resort or whatever on that territory, and then not allowing Palestinians to return, every single part of that is a violation of international law.
We've seen him, you know, talk about this idea with absolute confidence. It's going to become a real estate site. The US will own it and slowly develop it. It's a demolition site. We'll have it completely leveled out. We'll be building through other rich countries, beautiful sites for people to live in. Netanyahu seems to think that this idea is revolutionary and creative. The Palestinians say it's tantamount to their ethnic cleansing. But we live in a time, Naeem, where the normal rules don't seem to apply. And we've seen you know, the vetoes that have happened when it comes to humanitarian aid or cessation of violence against and the shelling of Gaza in the Security Council and other instruments simply allow what we have seen happen and the death and destruction over the last a year and a half or so happen, that it seems as if nothing is off the table. So what can stop Donald Trump, international law notwithstanding?
Yeah, international law is not going to stop him. I think that, I mean, we know that for decades, the United States has violated international law in various kinds of ways. But Trump takes it to a new level. You know, without any kind of mask about it. For him, international law doesn't exist, and only his law exists. The question of what can stop him, I think it's the response of the rest of the world. the United States is not a kind of almighty power that can just do whatever it wants and take over the Panama Canal and take over Greenland, whether the people living there want that or not, or take over Gaza or invade this or that country as it wills. There are citizens in these countries. There is an international community, and by that I don't mean the US and its allies. I mean an international community, which includes countries like South Africa, its BRICS partners, and others. And so the stopping Trump means that there needs to be sufficient amount of pushback against it. As far as Gaza is concerned, that pushback, already has started. Certainly, none of the Arab states that he has mentioned is agreeing to his proposal for forcible transfer. France has said that it's a dangerous proposal. But if he wants to do it, and he puts American soldiers on the ground because that's the only way that he can do it. There's no other way he's going to be able to move Palestinians off their land. Israelis have tried for the past 15 months and failed. If he puts American soldiers in Gaza, they will be slaughtered by the Palestinian resistance, and that will be one way of pushing back against him. But I think that this is an important moment in the history of the world where the rest of the world community has the challenge and the opportunity to stand up and say that we do believe in international law, even though the biggest bully in the world, denies its existence. So it is a challenge for the rest of the world to push back strongly against all this kind of madness that comes from Trump and other of his allies in Europe, for example.
Well, let's talk about Egypt and Jordan. And these are the two countries named by Donald Trump as countries that must take the Palestinians. They are refusing to take them. They perhaps also will not want to be seen as being complicit in this displacement of Palestinians. But Naeem, they are financially beholden to the US. In a sense, Jordan gets $1.35 billion annually from the US government. I think that the third largest recipient of US aid after Israel and Jordan is Egypt. And they're at around, I don't have the figure just offhand, but they also get a large sum of money from the United States government as well. Can they be strong-armed?
I think that this issue of aid, so Egypt, I think, is about 1.5 billion now, and Jordan just a little more than that. The issue of aid needs to be interrogated much more carefully. Let's remember, for example, that when there was the coup in Egypt, I think Obama was the president at the time and suspended American aid to Egypt at that time. Within 3 months, they had to restore the aid. Why? Because they realized that suspending aid to Egypt actually was worse for the United States and its foreign policy. So the Pentagon, for example, made a strong case that a suspension of aid to Egypt will cost the Pentagon $5 billion a year in fees through the Suez Canal, which it was getting for free, and so its ships could go up and down through the canal. $5 billion just for the Pentagon. Then that aid to Egypt, for example, is premised on the Camp David Accords, which accords protect Israel and ensure and guarantee Israel's security. If you remove that aid, then there's no guarantee that prevents Egypt from being aggressive towards Israel. So the United States realized within 3 months that the aid they were giving to Egypt was more to their benefit than to Egypt's benefit. So I think we should look at this aid much more carefully. The leverage that Egypt had at that time, because Abdel Fattah Sisi, the coup leader and then president, basically said to Obama, go ahead and stop the aid if you want. There'll be others who'll fill in. And at the time, there were others who were willing to fill in. So it's not as simple as that. That threat that Trump, in his very kind of transactional mind thinks that he can make, doesn't hold the same risk for the recipients of the aid that he thinks it does. And so he doesn't have as much leverage as he thinks he does. And then he said, for example, that Palestinians should have a homeland in Saudi Arabia. I mean, this is an even greater joke. Aid actually, in a sense, goes from Saudi Arabia to the United States, not the other way around. So I think his own kind of calculations need much more careful scrutiny.
Well, you use the word calculations, and anyone who's watching what Trump is doing now seems to think that they aren't well calculated and thought out. There is no real detail in some of the announcements and the plans that he makes. But he is a man with considerable power and influence, and he has said we'd see all hell break loose unless they release the hostages. There's a Saturday deadline now, and it seems as if the project to complete whatever the overall plan was in Gaza might be coming to a head with the support, of course, and the agreement of PM Netanyahu. So how do you see the next few days play out? And perhaps you can also just maybe make a comment or two on what else we need to be hearing coming from the Arab world, which, so far as what we heard from the UAE, just saying, well, there is no other plan on the table in respect of what Trump is proposing with the emptying out of Gaza and the Palestinians' relocation.
So let me just deal with that quickly. So we are told that there is another plan, and that plan has been drawn up by the Egyptians, Jordanians, Qataris, Saudis, and Emiratis, and that plan would be presented for basically for the reconstruction of Gaza. Sisi, the Egyptian president, has decided that he's not going to go and meet with Trump if the only item on the agenda is Trump's plan. So there is that pushback already. There are other plans on the table. There are proposals for certainly not enough, but some of the financing for the reconstruction of Gaza. I should just say that really the reconstruction of Gaza under international law should be the responsibility of Israel, not the responsibility of neighboring states. Israel is the one that committed war crimes, that destroyed civilian infrastructure, including schools and hospitals, etc. And so it should be the one repairing it.
Yeah.
But as has been the norm, it won't. In the next few days, I mean, we can assume now that the exchange of captives will take place tomorrow, because you'll remember, Iman, that on Monday, Hamas issued a statement saying that they're not going to release Israeli captives tomorrow, Saturday, because Israel wasn't abiding by the terms of the agreement, particularly in terms of the number of aid trucks that were allowed in, fuel trucks that were allowed in, no housing units were allowed in terms of the number of tents. Many of these indicators, only a fraction of what was agreed to was allowed in by the Israelis, and anything goes in only if the Israelis agree. Yesterday, Israel allowed in, for the first time since the ceasefire, all of what they had agreed to per day, which means that the Israelis have given in to the threat from Hamas. And so now that they've given in, the exchange of captives will take place tomorrow as per schedule.